This is Agriculture Today. We are back now with Dan O'Brien. He is our K-State grain market economist for this week's grain market update. So, Dan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Samantha.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and start as we always do in terms of futures markets, but specifically, let's talk corn and soybeans.
Yes, the trend that we've seen upwards in corn from about mid-August up through about the first part of September as it's not that we're falling off, but we've kind of come as we've approached harvest into more of a sideways trend. Closed yesterday at 669.5, had been up to just under 7 before. And again, I'm thinking that when you come into harvest timeframes with even with tight stocks to use, there's not as much impetus to keep running higher unless we come into the October 12th crop production report and get a surprise in terms of lower U.S. production than had been anticipated. There are a couple of headwinds coming into the on the corn market that could affect both corn and soybeans. We'll talk soybean prices in a minute. In that we get reports that low water levels in the Mississippi River in our river system is slowing down the possibility or the rate of shipment of barges down there. So down that river to the Gulf, and that could be an inhibitor on prices. Although what's at least in the Western Corn Belt where we're at, whatever it's produced is gobbled up in domestic uses. So that probably would affect futures prices overall, although I think our basis levels are awfully strong. And also, I think at least in the West, and when you look at soybean futures, they've just been, of course, they've been hopping around and volatile all over the place. Had closed on yesterday's markets at 14.10 3/4 for the lead contract in November. Had been up to about 15.05 thereabouts. So again, just up and down movement. That same potential concern with regard to export shipments could come into play for soybeans, as well as October 12th numbers coming out that could offer a surprise to the markets in terms of lower usage. But overall, another bit of news that's coming in that's probably affecting soybeans maybe a little bit more than corn is that we are seeing the beginning of the planting season down in South America for soybeans and for corn. Argentina is still pretty dry, but in Brazil, at least temporarily, they've had rainfall that helps them be more optimistic in terms of where their crop production prospects might go. So interesting times, and overall, we should add also on the cash markets, we still see that same thing we've been talking about for about 6 or 7 or 8 weeks in a row now, Samantha, that cash price bids are really strong in all throughout the state, but especially in the western part. Garden City cash bid of 810, which is as a basis $1.41 over. It had been higher than that at times this summer, but now with harvest coming on, it's strengthened even more. Again, that's 5, 6, 7 cents higher than where it's been. So any grain that we get coming into that part of the world would be pretty hotly demanded. And Colby, that in the northwest part, had been doing been trailing just a little bit behind. It still has a bit of $1 over, but now really across the state, we're seeing these locations come in strong. Colby at a basis bid of $1.01 over. Salina $1 over. We already talked about Garden City. Hutchinson $1.05 over. Even Columbus has at their top bid about $1 over. And again, we're taking the top bids in these areas that we're looking at. So a lot of strength. You are seeing basis bids for new crop next year for corn that are well, in Salina 10 under. At 604, 10 under the Dees 2023 futures. Same in Hutchinson. And actually, what's kind of surprising is that the hottest new crop forward contract bids for grain aren't in Garden City and Colby, but they're found over in Salina and Hutchinson. So I'm not sure what that says, other than there are concerns about gathering and supplies in that part of the world too.
Sure, absolutely. It's interesting some of the themes we're seeing play out with these market updates right now. One, the effects of drought widespread, not only obviously in the crop production that's going on, but in our river system. That's something that I would have never even have thought about affecting our markets. And then even abroad in Argentina, just drought throughout.
Well, again, we had this week our ag lenders set of meetings, one in Garden City and one in Salina, in Manhattan. And coming into that, of course, we're paying close attention to weather forecasts. And the latest weather forecasts actually are for, and I think Chip Redmond out of our shops talked about this, that La Nina would remain strong through spring, and then there's signs that it might weaken. So if for production for 2023, that would actually be a good thing in that we the world's awfully tight in a lot of these areas, and we need sizable crops, even at the expense maybe of prices moderating some. Generally, when you look at how farmers make money in Kansas and elsewhere, we have good yields and decent prices, we make the most revenue. So I think that's personally what we're cheering for, and much less for on a humanitarian basis. You're looking at the issue of just having adequate food supplies, not just in the more affluent countries, but also in those that are a lot more tight in terms of revenues to be able to afford imports. So overall, we're cheering for strong crops and good prices, and even if we may not get the very top prices, still it'd be good for in the overall scheme of things to have lots of supply around.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because I think as it stands right now, we're safe to say it's okay crops, maybe a little worse for wear crops.
Yeah.
Crazy prices. And you mentioned that normally with harvest around the corner, or currently going on really in most parts of the state, we usually see a sort of softening normally at this time. But I don't think, from what it sounds like, we're not going to see that this year.
Yeah, off of our Ag Manager website, we try to track individual locations, those that come through publicly reported or publicly available sites for cash prices, and so far for corn, we haven't seen any weakening of basis at all. And in fact, over the last 3 or 4 weeks, in some of central Kansas in southwest Kansas, north central at Salina and Hutchinson, south central, we saw, if anything, basis was continuing to improve. Which is contra-seasonal, with a new crop coming on. But yields have been coming out of those areas, and I think elevator operators have been looking at non-irrigated yields, and yeah, in some places we were fortunate to catch rains, things came in. But if they happen to be in a region that at least part of it was really short of moisture this summer, and there's a lot of Kansas like that, they're probably looking at their origination area and thinking, gracious sakes, whatever does come out, we want to get hold of quickly, because what we have to pull from is probably substantially or significantly less than we would normally be expecting.
Absolutely. And from what I understand in our conversation before, there's 2 reports being released today, maybe even minutes away as people are listening to this, from the USDA in terms of wheat. So some volatility may be anticipated in those markets.
Yes, there's the USDA at the end of September, and tomorrow, and then today is the end of September on the 30th. They released the quarterly stocks report, which will show that as of September 1st, the amount of stocks for corn, soybeans, wheat, grain, sorghum, sunflowers, other major crops that we grow here in Kansas. Of course, for corn and soybeans, those numbers will be directly compared to what the WASDE report estimated on September the 12th. So that'll be interesting to be a direct comparison. Not expected to have any major surprises, but what can sneak up on us in a WASDE report, especially on feed grains, is the possibility of more feeding than we would have expected. And we have a pretty good handle on ethanol usage, on exports, what's happening in other wet corn milling. but we don't measure at a farm level or even a company level the livestock feed use. So there's the possibility of that surprise. So stay tuned on that. And then there's the annual small grain summary report, and out of that they look at yields, acres, et cetera, and end up with production numbers for wheat. Again, not anticipated there either to be any major surprises, but I guess as we're talking here at 11 o'clock today, there will be new information coming into the market, and I think it behoove Kansas farmers with grain to sell, either new crop or old crop, to be aware that, hey, there's a possibility today of some volatility if there's a surprise in these numbers, and if they're near making a decision, that this would be a time to stay close to their cell phones or their radios, whichever, to see what might come about, and if the market starts to move in some direction that either for or against them, then they can make the most informed decision.
Absolutely. And otherwise, I think moving on, wheat markets have remained pretty stable still.
We have continued this trend over the last 3 or 4 weeks of having strong U.S. wheat exports. And it seems like, along with worries about planting the hard red crop in our neighborhood, that this November 22nd end of agreement that Iran brokered through the UN with Ukraine and Russia to allow grain to come out stands every strong likelihood of not being continued. So once that became apparent, we for about 3 weeks in a row, we've been at now about 22, 23, 25 million bushels a week of U.S. wheat exports, and hard red being a big part of that, and from what we grow. And we need a pace of about 16 to 17 to meet the USDA's projections. So the geopolitical impacts of this are coming home to roost in terms of U.S. wheat being strongly demanded, and that's even with a strong U.S. dollar that adds about about $2 to $2.50 to what, by my calculations, to what the world would see, what world would pay normally when they look at the U.S. price, go exchange their currency for the U.S. dollar, and so again, about a couple dollars higher plus higher actual value to actual cost and expense. Even with all that higher cost of the U.S. dollar impacting wheat exports, still we're running pretty strong for about 3 or 4 weeks in a row.
Absolutely. Well, like you said, we'll continue to watch and see how things play out with Russia, whether or not they continue that agreement or decide to call it off at that November deadline. So we'll keep an eye on that and hopefully have positive news to report on that maybe in the next month or so. But
those sides are pretty well dug in. I don't know that so I think that that most market watchers and apparently wheat buyers around the world have said, hey, we don't have a lot of confidence that's going to happen. So they've started to go grab what they can in really a seller's market situation.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, we've chatted a lot here today, but I know you mentioned that you spoke at the Ag Lenders Conference and you spoke about a few other topics while there too, but maybe we'll have to save that for a little day, but just a highlight of some of those here at the end.
Tight stocks. When you look at world corn, world coarse grains, which would include sorghum and millet and everything else on top of that, look at wheat, and you look at soybeans. And when you look at things graphically, we're basically going sideways on ending stocks. Usage is going up, so we're tightening up on everything, and it's just very, very startling to see the consistency of that pattern all across the board. And on the one hand, that should provide support for all these grains going forward. The caveat for us now is to look at the inflation we've seen on the cost side, especially for fertilizer, and that's probably a discussion for another day. It maybe includes my good colleague Greg Eibendahl in that one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fertilizer costs on the top of a lot of people's minds as we're thinking about approaching spring for sure. But hopefully a topic we'll save for another Ag Today segment for sure, a little bit more deep in that. But Dan, as always, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Samantha. Take care.
You as well. Once again, that was Dan O'Brien. He is our K-State grain market economist covering this week's grain market update. We will be back with more ahead on Agriculture Today.